Alright, what is up guys? Welcome back to the next tier list video. Thank you so much for all the support recently on the videos. It means a lot to me. Today's setup is going to be a little scuffed until probably after Worlds because I'm still like traveling, getting a lot of stuff figured out. So, I'm going to do my best, however, to make these videos short and informational for you guys. The other tier list videos have been pretty long, but as I start to record more and more, I'm going to try my best to make them shorter and shorter, but as informational as they have been. So I'm kind of new to recording these kind of videos, so it's hard for me, but I'm going to try my best with each video. And if you're enjoying this kind of content, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. It means a lot. All right, so hopping into the tier list. This is for the new Inteleon patch, and an absolute must pick. We have Umbreon overtaking Zacian as the #1 spot. So if you keep track of Unite API, it's a great tool for solo queue. But again, I need to stress this is a competitive tier list. So it is not for solo queue, it's for competitive. But Umbreon is dominating the solo queue charts. It had like I think last week it had like a 45% pick rate and like over a 55% win rate. So this Pokemon is absolutely insanely easy to play, insanely broken stats and moves. It's already confirmed changed in the next update. We already have like leaked balance patches from PTS. But right now it is the best Pokemon in the game by far, overtaking Zacian. Zacian in #2, still extremely strong broken base stats. Like Umbreon just has the same like broken base stats as Zacian. However, Umbreon has better moves. Zacian's moves now are not that good. Like Sacred Sword, Agility, they're still like pretty decent, but compared to Umbreon's moves, they're not as broken. Now, like the mainly most broken thing about Zacian is its passive and its stats. So, in #3 we have Zoroark. If you watched NAIC regionals, that is what a lot of this tier list is going to be based off. So it was actually zero pain, and that does make a huge difference for what Pokemon are better. So this tier list actually has changed a lot from previous tier lists because of that zero pain factor. Because Pokemon has now made competitive LAN esports zero pain, which is a huge deal. When you're playing online, the best pain you can get is like 70, 80 pain. Most people are playing on over 100 pain in Unite. So it's a completely different game on zero pain. If you watched it, also Comfy was a lot more broken than it was in online. Kind of no one picked Comfy online, but as the tournament progressed, teams didn't really pick Comfy until they realized how broken it was. Where in the finals, TTV picked Comfy first pick. And if you didn't follow those, we got second. We lost to TTV. We beat them in winners finals. However, they figured out our drafts and they beat us in grand finals. So it was an insane series. I recommend you watch it. But Zoroark absolutely popped off. My last video was about Overlord Zoroark because it looked like the best Pokemon in the game, which I think it was for that tournament. But that's because Umbreon and Zacian are banned. So that makes sense. It also has a game-breaking bug, which no one abused, thankfully, in regionals. But for some reason, admins are allowing it. So that is concerning. We'll probably see a lot of Night/Zoro because that's what the bug is at Worlds. Hopefully they patch it by then in this upcoming balance patch. But next we have Slowbro. Slowbro also had an insane showing at NA regionals. Most teams with Slowbro, I believe, won unless they completely trolled their drafts. It looked very strong, so I bumped it up because it is a very strong first pick, and it is probably the only thing that can reliably counter Zoroark in the team fights. Slowbro Unite, just very strong. It has very strong laning with one of the best secures, and it is the tankiest Pokemon in the game. Leafeon, another banned Pokemon in regionals. However, it has been looking insanely good in solo queue. Haven't really seen it in many competitive tournaments yet because it was still banned, but I think we'll see a good showing of it at Worlds. And it did get some like slight nerfs and buffs, but I don't think that will change much. And it's for this current patch anyways. Leafeon just does insane amounts of damage. It's good in literally any lane. You can play it like anywhere. Its Unite move is extremely broken. It's literally like a nuclear bomb, with how much damage it does. So, I think I was playing like Dodrio. I was like level 13. The opposing Leafeon was level 13. The Leafeon like autoed me one time when I was full health, and then Unite moved me, and I died. Instant one shot. So this Pokemon does insanely good numbers. Lapras. So Lapras also had a really good showing at regionals. It's still the insanely broken Pokemon it has been. They nerfed Water Pulse a lot, but Ice Beam Parasan was played a lot, and they didn't nerf that moveset whatsoever. So Lapras is basically unnerfed on that moveset, which some people actually preferred that on release anyways. So you can see why this Pokemon still made it to this tier. I believe out of all these Pokemon except the banned ones, every single Pokemon was picked in almost every draft except for like 2 or 3 drafts. So I believe Slowbro was picked in literally every draft. Lapras was only not picked in like 1 draft game. Zoroark was not picked by players who weren't that good at Zoroark because it has a very high skill cap, but by teams who are good at Zoro is picked almost every single game. Alright, on to the next tier. So we have Still Broken AF. And in this tier we have Dodrio. Dodrio looked insanely good on Zero Pain. I was debating putting it in the tier above actually, but I'm also kind of grouping this with online tournaments. So I'm gonna be like, LAN is now a factor I'm taking into account, but I'm gonna kind of average them into online tournaments because online tournaments are still a huge part of competitive play. So if this was just Zero Pain LAN, Dodrio would probably be in the above tier, so would Urshifu. But online, they're not as broken, whereas I believe Zoro can still work pretty well online. It doesn't need to be Zero Pain to look extremely strong. So Dodrio, pretty self-explanatory. It's been here for a long time. You kind of want to just go Drill Peck, Jump Kick, but it's still just Speedsters are really broken right now with the current meta, where you can just run across the map. If you watch my Zoroark guide I just posted, you'll kind of see it has a similar playstyle to Dodrio in the way I explain how you should play Speedsters. Urshifu, Red Urshifu has not been touched in a couple patches, so it's pretty self-explanatory why it's still this far up. Blue Urshifu, it looked really strong on Zero Pain, but it has seen a lot less play online. However, on Zero Pain, those 3 instant dashes are extremely strong. Glaceon. So Glaceon has actually fallen really far. I think Icicle Spirit is just one of those moves that is either extremely broken, or it just doesn't do as much as you think it should. So it still feels pretty strong. It just doesn't feel like the threat that it was, and thankfully it's been banned from competitive, so we haven't seen its effect. We've only seen it in solo queue, but in solo queue it's a lot more manageable now, especially with all these speedsters in the meta. It can't kill Umbreon either, so there's just other more broken Pokemon than it right now. It's still at the top of like some of these damage dealers, how broken they are, but the nerfs were definitely very good. I was very surprised with how good the nerfs were actually. Icicle Sphere felt a lot worse. Chandelier. So Chandelier is actually getting a nerf, which I was surprised about. I did not realize this Pokemon was so strong in solo queue or whatever the stats the devs are looking at. But Chandelier is receiving an insane nerf. So the next balance patch, probably in 2 weeks, Chandelier is going to be complete ass. If you love Chandelier, I suggest playing it as much as you can now, while it's still really broken. We saw a lot of Chandelier that saw a lot of success in regionals. So it's just one of the best damage dealers right now, mid-range damage dealers. It still has pretty long range. It's one of the best attackers at staying alive. So besides Glaceon, you'll see that these damage dealer attackers, they're very good at staying alive from speedsters because their Unite move, like Chandelier, makes everything blinded around it. Mew goes invincible. These Unite moves are very good against speedsters. So that's kind of a big reason why they're so far up when speedsters are kind of dominating the top tiers. Even against Umbreon, Umbreon's very annoying when it gets on you. So they can just get away very easily. They do a lot of damage. they're just very versatile in what they do. So Chandelier is very good into Zoroark speedsters because of the move lock. So you pair it with like a good support and it actually can survive pretty well. Mew is kind of similar in which it just does everything. Mew is literally better than Chandelier when it comes to versatility. It literally does everything. Again, it has 6 moves that you can basically use at any time. And we saw on Zero Pain how effective that was. Mew was looking like the most broken attacker on LAN. And it has long range poke. It has E-Ball for consistent mid-range damage. It has Surf for unstoppable canceling and just stunning. So Mew is very, very broken. Next we have Blissey, which Blissey is this far up because it was actually because the speedsters were so broken on Zero Pain LAN that Blissey really shined. So if you watch Grand Finals, TTV started banning Blissey, which I play it, against us, just because our comps were so effective with the Blissey that they realized if they just ban it, it makes our comps a lot weaker, because the Blissey was enabling these speedsters to just go ham. You Bliss Unite them when they dive the team 1v5, and they'll kill everyone. So, Blissey Defender, not support, was looking very strong. There was some play with support, but it wasn't looking as strong. A very common comp was Blissey Defender with Comfy support, and that's very strong in competitive. I still believe Blissey is actually really good in solo queue still with the eggs healing. So Blissey just overall looks very strong, and it also counters Hoopa if you know how to do the egg portal canceling, which I do a lot in tournaments. So if you're curious how to do that, you can just look up some of my Blissey gameplay in tournaments. I played it literally every game in Worlds when we were world champions. So Hoopa, very strong. However, it kind of fell down a couple tiers. Originally, when I made this tier list, I actually put it in absolute must pick, but I made this tier list right before regionals, and then I edited a lot of it before, or like after we played regionals, based on my opinion now, after playing on Zero Pain. So Hoopa is still very strong for macro. I remember one game, like, we played Hoopa macro perfectly. We lost the early game, but because we played Hoopa mid-game macro well, we ended up being up like 300 points. However, we just got destroyed in the late game fight, and that lead didn't matter as much because we weren't able to make it a really consistent lead where we could make it so Rayquaza didn't matter, which sometimes you can. But Hoopa is still probably the best support. Blissey is technically a support, but it was more played as a defender. So Hoopa is still the best support. However, you can see like all these Pokemon still better than Hoopa in my opinion. Like when you're drafting, you probably want to pick some of these Pokemon over Hoopa. So next we have still not balanced here. So this is Pokemon that are still like very strong, still like probably need a nerf. If we were to make everything like balanced, you'd probably nerf everything in these 4 tiers or 3 tiers. So at the start we have Buzzwole. Buzzwole just has one of the strongest early game laning phases. Same with A9. And what Buzzwole does is it has insanely strong CC. It has really good secure. And it has a pretty fast Unite move charge. So it just does everything really well. If you just want like a strong top laner that's going to do solid every game, you pick that. I think TTV played a lot of Buzzwole, and it really showed how strong this Pokemon is, just as like you just put someone on it the whole time. Nothing really counters it. And besides Clefable, but you can't really pick Clefable to counter Buzzwole because Clefable will do nothing into the rest of the team, especially if the enemy team has like a Mew or something. So Buzzwole just looked like a very strong pick. No like actual counters you can run against it. It's just very solid. Not like extremely broken. Like you can definitely kill it, but it just looks very solid and competitive. Especially like it's the king of those 1v1 fights. So if it ever catches someone out in those side lanes, it's very, very strong. A9 is similar in where like it's really strong in those mid-range fights. When it can catch Pokemon out, it does suffer to like long range poking it out, which is why Mew and Chandelier are so far above it, because they kind of just outrange the A9. But A9 is probably the next best pick behind Chandelier until the speedsters because you can stun the speedsters. When the speedsters have full heal, they can kill you really easily. But besides that, they can't kill you that well. And just give me one quick second to drink some water. And then I will continue with the list. Okay. So the next Pokemon we have here is Blastoise. Blastoise saw a decent amount of play in regionals. Not as much as I thought. I originally had Blastoise a lot higher on this list. However, Buzzwole just kind of counters Blastoise really hard. Because when Blastoise rapid spins, Buzzwole can just superpower Blastoise out of the rapid spin. And because Blastoise is such a strong top laner, that's also why Buzzwole was picked so much. Just to kind of deny other good top laners away. When someone picks Buzzwole, not only can you not pick Buzzwole in top lane now you can't pick Blastoise. Because Buzzwole counters it so hard. So that's kind of how drafts are playing out. Teams would just early pick Buzzwole, so the enemy team couldn't even pick Blastoise because the Blastoise would get destroyed by the Buzzwole. So the fact that there's a hard counter to Blastoise that's kind of so good into other Pokemon as well, like Buzzwole is still fine into all the other Pokemon, it's really making Blastoise fall off in the meta. Not only that, Lapras, not I kind of combine Lapras and Blastoise as names. Lapras is just a better version of Blastoise right now in the meta, and Lapras is all the way at the top tier. So, Umbreon is also kind of just a better version of Blastoise if you play it in the top lane. So that's why Blastoise has kind of fallen off. There's just better picks in it when they're available, and it just gets hard counterpicked as well. So, next here, this might be controversial, but I have Inteleon here. And a lot of people think that Inteleon is ass, but this is kind of my prediction ranking. It might be a little too high, we'll see. However, I think Inteleon deserves this ranking. And the reason is that Inteleon is the best ADC when it has Unite Move. When it pops Unite Move, you're critting every auto. Every auto does like 2.4k damage, some insane shit like that. Like, I believe it's the best ADC when you have Unite. So you're going to have Unite in those big team fights around objectives anyways. So the Unite move is extremely, extremely strong. The rest of its kit is kind of meh. The fact it has like a dash is really good for it. If it didn't have a dash, it'd probably be a lot lower. So that's good in its kit. Its finger guns or whatever, it does a decent amount of damage. Snipe shot is kind of meh, but it's actually a really good secure. So, while its moveset, it's mid, I actually believe its Unite move makes it the best ADC. With its Unite move, it will out damage even like Cinderace or like other Pokemon in these fights. Like, there's no other Pokemon that will output as much DPS as Inteleon in these team fights. So you pair it with like a Bliss Unite, which if you don't know, when you Bliss Unite someone, it makes them do like, I forgot the number, but like, let's say like 50% increased damage, something like that for like 8 seconds. Basically it just lasts the entire team fight where it does way more damage, and it's not going to die with the Bliss Unite. So just think about that. You're Bliss Uniting your Inteleon, and then Inteleon is going to live. You also have insane secure with the Snipe Shot to secure objectives. You have the most DPS in team fights. With that Unite move, you don't even need Bliss Unite, but if you have Bliss Unite, like, I think you literally kill anything. Like, we tested this in ladder, and Inteleon was shredding literally everything, even Umbreons. It was winning 1v1s against Umbreons, actually. So I believe if you play Inteleon right, it could be extremely strong and competitive. However, I do believe it's one of those Pokemon that kind of just needs a pocket in the team fights. So kind of like Cinderace, where like I like to call them half a Pokemon. So it doesn't feel that strong when it's by itself because you can kill it before it does all its damage. But you pair it with like an Eldegoss, a Blissey, that uses their entire kit to keep it alive while it's outputting damage, it will out DPS anything. So that's what I believe Inteleon is. It's half a Pokemon. So it's not going to look that strong in solo queue, but I believe my prediction is it will be really good and competitive. So next I have a Azumarill. So Buzzwole is still kind of outshining Azumarill right now in the top lane, but Azu is still really, really strong in the top lane. Buzzwole just kind of does everything Azu does, but better. But I believe if Buzzwole didn't exist, people would be picking Azu a lot more. The reason I have Blastoise above it is just because Blastoise is tankier, so it has like better matchups than Azu. While Azu does insane amounts of damage, it kind of doesn't have the tankiness that Blastoise has, and it can suffer into long range poke like Decidueye, Mew, stuff like that. That's like the one weakness of Azu. It's hard to get on top of those. You kind of have to run X speed to make up for it. But now that Shedinja doll's in the game especially, it's kind of a waste of a slot, because I think just being able to have like eject Shedinja doll full heal is really good, and like X speed like helps Pokemon that kind of suffer from not having like not having something in their kit to like gap close. But Pokemon are really suffering now that run X speed as a crutch, because I mean, you only have that every 50 seconds, and if you get kited in the team fight, it's over for you. So that's just something to keep in mind. Sylveon, just very strong overall. Had a strong showing in regionals. A lot of teams picked it. It's not too strong. It's not like weak whatsoever. It's just very strong. Both movesets are fine. It's always been solid in like almost every meta. So I kind of bumped it up a couple of tiers because of that. Like, it looks very strong no matter what the meta. It's always a solid pick you can pick. So kind of like Buzzwole, but for like attacker or even jungle. LD is the second best support. Again, I'm not really counting Blissey as a support. I'm counting it more as a defender. And LD is definitely the second best support behind Hoopa. It has insane amounts of damage, actually. It does a lot of damage. It has really good healing. And just like its Unite move is very, very good. Its kit is very good. So, yeah. I feel like LD is pretty self-explanatory. It's been one of the best supports for eons in this game. Next is Tree. Tree has fallen off a lot, even though it hasn't received any nerfs. That's just because there's a lot more tank killers in the meta, or Pokemon that can just kite out Tree, or just better versions of Tree, like Umbreon's a better version of Tree. And actually, I forgot to mention, Tree completely destroys Aqua Tail Azu, so that's another reason Azu is not as high as I would like to put it, because I think Azu's damage output is insane right now. But anyways, back to Tree. It still does its job very well where it just lives, but people are getting a lot better at just avoiding the tree, going and killing the backline, especially with these speedsters. They just run past the tree. And although you can try to pin them down, a lot of these speedsters, especially on zero pain, they can just dodge your wood hammers. It's very hard to hit them on zero pain, because there's a lot of Pokemon with dashes that can dash in time when the pain is not like over 100. So that's just something to keep in mind. It gets a lot worse on zero pain. Stuns in general are just a lot better when the pain is higher. They literally get way better the higher pain there is. So on zero pain, characters that rely on stunning a lot, like Tree, are going to fall off of it. So next I have solid picks. Snorlax was like literally one of the most picked defenders. It just has a really strong early game. And actually, Yawn was played a lot. The one game we won in Grand Finals, I picked Yawn Snorlax and I absolutely destroyed. There's some nice tech you can do with Yawn Snorlax, where it's one of the only moves in the game that has this now, where you can yawn in 2 places at once with the eject button, and I abused that in the game we won. You can definitely go check it out. I might make a video on it because it's a lot of fun. And Block is still really good. Snorlax is just very good overall. Its kit, it's the best early game defender, so a lot of teams like us too will like to play a scaling bot lane like Chandelier, who's not very good in lane, but you pick it with Snorlax, and Snorlax helps carry that lane until a Chandelier's fed, and that's kind of worth. So Snorlax might be worse in the late game fights than Tree into certain comps, but its early game definitely makes up for it. And I actually would rather have Snorlax into certain comps than Tree. Like, I'd rather have a Snorlax into Poke, like Decidueye and stuff, because you can get on top of them and yawn them for an easy kill for your speedsters. So that's just something to keep in mind. Venusaur, just very solid overall pick. It does get countered by a lot, like Delphox, Just long range kind of claps it. It also gets clapped by speedsters. That's why it's so far down below. But it's still solid. Solid picks are kind of just, if they're not getting countered in the draft, they can work really well. Like when you have a good Venu game where Venu's not getting countered, it just absolutely destroys. But you have to like draft well so the Venusaur doesn't get countered. You can last pick it. It needs a lot of prep to be good, but they will feel strong when it has that strong prep. So Comfey is that one Pokemon where I'd put it in like the top tier on Zero Pain land. However, again, this is Zero Pain plus tournaments combined. So when you combine it with the online tournaments, I would say like you should almost never pick Comfey in online tournaments unless you're doing the Blissey Comfey strat. If you're not doing that, then you almost never pick it. It's still solid, but that's why it is this far below when it destroyed in NA regionals. Dragonite, I think is a Pokemon that suffers on Zero Pain. The reason being because the boosted auto attacks can actually miss. So on Zero Pain, it's a lot harder to hit those boosted auto attacks. It's a lot harder to hit Hyper Beam because kind of Dragonite's, all of its moves are kind of slow to hit. So that's really hard. However, on tournament, like online tournaments, I believe Dragonite's still really strong. It has really good secure. It's been dominating solo queue, I believe. So I think it's still solid overall, but that's why it is so far below after the buffs, which I think the buffs are massive. So next I have Espeon. Espeon saw a lot of play in regionals, however, not very good win rate. So I believe it's still a really, really strong pick in the right hand. However, it does get outranged by the current meta, by like Chandelier, Mew, and Decidueye, and even Delphox. Just anything that outranges it is really bad for it. It's also really prone to getting killed by speedsters, so this is just not a good meta for Espeon. When it has good matchups, it's really good for Espeon, but like this meta is just not it for Espeon. There was a lot of long range and a lot of speedsters picked in these games in regionals, so Espeon was just kind of getting farmed by those. Delphox has fallen off quite a bit as well. I used to have it higher, I believe. There's just not really any reason to pick it. A lot of times you'd pick it, you'd rather pick Chandelier for survivability versus speedsters. You'd rather pick Decidueye to counter them even harder. So there's very rarely a good Delphox game. It's like place in the meta has just kind of fallen off because especially healing has just like, there's Hoopa portals, which Delphox Unite doesn't really counter that much. And a lot of like the Pokemon like Zoroark don't even heal. They just kill you. So it's just, it had a place in the meta and that place has kind of fallen off recently. Clefable just really suffers from its weak early game because in the top lane with speedsters, it's very volatile. You kind of just want to get your speedster ahead. That's why Eldegoss is so good because it's really good early game. However, Clefable has the weakest early game out of every support. I dare say it has a worse early game than Comfey. So it really suffers from that, and that's the main reason it's so ass. But I believe it just doesn't do enough late game either because people have to group around it for heals. That makes it really easy to hit group abilities like multiple arrows. Like with one arrow, you hit multiple people. You get hit by multiple solar beams. There's a lot of Venu solar beam. I forgot to mention as well. That was a nice long range pick as well. So that just kind of makes Clefable a lot worse because your team has to group around you for these heals, and it really gets countered by that grouping up. You might think it counters speedsters, but it really doesn't. Gravity has a longer cooldown than all of Zoroark's abilities. So most of the time, Zoroark will get its dash back before you get gravity back, and then you're just dead. Next is Cramorant. It's been banned, which is why you haven't seen it picked. But this is still a very strong Pokemon. It's a very solid attacker. It probably has the best late game out of all the attackers. It has one of the best Unite moves in the game still. It has just been banned from a game-breaking bug. So hopefully we'll see that at Worlds. It's very, very strong. Garchomp is just another solid overall pick. The reason it's this low is because Buzzwole kind of destroys it. Like, Buzzwole kind of just farms Garchomp. So, if you're not playing into Buzzwole, Garchomp is fine. it actually destroys like these long range Pokemon. But it gets farmed by a lot of the top laners right now. So it's still a solid overall pick, which is why it's in solid picks, because some drafts it'll look really, really good. But it does get like kind of countered by a lot of drafts, and there's just better Pokemon as well. So, this is now kind of the one trick category, what I like to call it, where if you're really good at these Pokemon, they can work in a lot of drafts. You still have to draft around them to make them work, but I still believe they can work pretty well if you're really good at them. And again, this is just for competitive, and it's not just like one tricks. It's like these mons actually look viable, but they're really high skill cap, so you have to be really good at them for them to look viable. So I feel like this is pretty self-explanatory. I don't really feel like I have to explain anything on this list, so I'm not really gonna delve deep into much. Scissor and Scyther are grouped together on this tier list, by the way, so I just think they kind of fall into the same category here. Yeah, there's not really much to explain here, just one tricks. These Pokemon are hard. If you're good at them, they'll look good. There's probably better picks in the meta, but you do you. So there's probably some surprising Pokemon here. So I knocked Pikachu down a tier because Pikachu is really good for its stuns, but again, on Zero Pain, these stuns really did not matter. It looked really useless. Sableye as well is known for its stuns. You might be surprised because you saw ASU play Sableye a lot, and they did get pretty far. They got like 4th, I think, something like that. Maybe 3rd. I forget. I think maybe they got 3rd, actually. But they played like exclusively Sableye, which is surprising. I did not expect it, actually. We thought they were going to play more Hoopa. But I think they were just playing certain comps. They're playing Sableye Espeon, which is a really good combo. Like that they really liked. So that's a little different, but I think Sableye on its own is really ass without like comboing it with a Pokemon that's good with its abilities. I just think ASU is really good at those Pokemon like Decidueye, Espeon, that combo really well with Sableye. That's why they like it. But I think it's kind of bait. It's just not that good. There's just better supports in my opinion. I already went over Pikachu. T-Tar, honestly, I might have T-Tar a bit high. I might put it lower. It's looking so ass nowadays. It gets so punished before it hits level 9. And its level 9 is not even that good into like Umbreon. Like, it doesn't even win the 1v1 once it hits level 9. So there's not really any rewards for getting that level 9 nowadays. It's just kind of getting outclassed by newer Pokemon. Same can be said for like Greedent, Lucario. But Lucario's getting buffs. So that's exciting. I think it might actually be good. Machamp, I've gone over this in previous tier lists. It's just very, very high skilled, very hard to pull off, and I don't think the reward is worth it. Charizard also fallen off very much. It's hard to get its Unite move off sometimes, and even when you get its Unite move off, it doesn't look that good. It gets killed in Unite move. It doesn't get any kills. It's just not looking very strong. Absol is only in this tier because it has good matchups into a lot of the meta, like these long range, like Chandelier, it can kill. The speedsters, it can kill, but it does suffer into like those all-rounder melees like Azu and Garchomp. Like, you're never going to be able to kill those Pokemon. Buzzwole as well. So the only reason it's in this tier is because it has a good matchup into a lot of Pokemon, just not all of them. The next tier is the bottom tier. Never pick you griefers. So I have Dragapult at the top. Again, these tiers are ordered. I might have forgotten to say that at the start. So left is the best to the right. But Dragapult and Gengar, even Crustle, I think they're really good in solo queue. Like, don't get me wrong, you can make these work in solo queue. Gengar, it looks like one of the best Pokemon in solo queue. Their kits are not designed for competitive, in my opinion. And that's fine. Not every Pokemon has to be good and competitive. Because solo queue is still a large part of the game. And I like that these Pokemon are designed that way. But the rest of the Pokemon not really are like Dragapult and Gengar. They're more so just ass base stat-wise. Like, fun fact, level 1 Zacian has better stats than level 7 Greninja when you're fully evolved. So, a lot of these Pokemon getting buffed, though, in the next balance patch. So, I'm excited to see how they'll change. Alright, next I have the item tier list. So we're going to go over held items first and then battle items, Shedinja that's exciting to talk about. So the biggest change you'll see here is I put Slick Spoon number 1. In my last item tier list, I had this in A tier. Now I have it in S tier, must pick. And this was probably the most picked item in regionals. It's so good on all these special attacking Pokemon, and there's a lot of special attackers in the meta. So this item is just so versatile, so good on every Pokemon. You literally pick it on every Pokemon. In last tier list, I put EXP share in the number 1 slot. The reason I put it down so much with no changes to the actual item is because I realized, yes, EXP share is so broken on these defenders and supports. However, that's only some of the Pokemon, right? Like, there's still carries, and like there's 3 other roles that are not going to run EXP share, so it's not technically the best item because you have to account for all the Pokemon. So Slick Spoon, you can literally run, like there could be 5 Pokemon on a team and all 5 of them want to run Slick Spoon. That could be a very real possibility. That's how broken this item is. Attack weight. That's just an item that has so much reward for its value, especially on Pokemon like Zoroark, that I still believe it deserves this number 2 spot. It helps you snowball and deal insane amounts of damage. Focus Band, another item that there's a very real possibility you could want to run Focus Band on all 5 Pokemon on your team. Muscle Band is just very good on every Pokemon. Again, EXP share is still in this tier because it's extremely broken, even though you only run it on 2 roles. I've already gone in depth on my last item tier list on why this is so broken. Definitely run EXP share. You're griefing if you don't have EXP share on your team in competitive. So in the OP tier, we have Buddy Barrier, Choice Spec, Score Shield, Razor Claw, Rapid Fire Scarf, Weakness Policy, Scope Lens. So all of these items are just solid. You could honestly like interchange some of these items. I'm just kind of like trying to judge the items based on how usable they are by all the Pokemon in the game. So obviously certain items are going to be better on certain Pokemon. You're going to want to run Razor Claw on like Dragonite and Urshifu, but you're not going to want to run Razor Claw on Glaceon. So it's very hard to determine how good they actually are unless you go by Pokemon. So I'm not going to go too in-depth into these tiers. And then this tier is just, again, they're good on certain Pokemon, but they're definitely like not as good. Like not as many Pokemon can run them. Like Floatstone, you really only want to run on speedsters, so that's a lot less Pokemon in the game that would want to run it. And then this tier are just like never use these items, just use other items. Like you might read it and think it's good, but the actual base stats are ass. Just go to UniteDB, look into it, and you'll realize you should never run these items. You'll probably run another item and you'll start winning a lot more. So I have the full item tier list here, if you want to see it. And then now we go into battle items. This is exciting, but give me a moment to drink some water before we head into it. All right. So number 1, we have eject button. That's because there's so many insane combos you can do with this item, so many abilities you can dodge. It's just very, very versatile. And as people start to get better at the game, start to learn more complicated combos, eject button enables a lot of these complicated combos to be even better and to just destroy team fights with it once you get better at the game. Shedinja is another item that I just think thrives. This is a bold prediction, but I believe it's the second best item behind eject button. And I just believe there's so many, if you watch my Zoroark video, you'll see like why I think it's so broken. Like there's so many Pokemon you can do insane combos on with this that will just thrive from like this 2-second invincibility. Because while you're invincible, the reason it's so broken, while you're invincible, you get your move cooldowns back. So in my Zoroark guide, I was using all my abilities and they go on a 4-second cooldown, and I just use Shedinja and I basically have it back up. And I'm able to live because of that 2-second invincibility, and now I have another combo to use. And there's Pokemon that don't even get their moves canceled, like Cramorant, Unite move. You can use Shedinja while you're in Cram Unite, and the Unite will still go off while you're invincible. So you're doing insane damage and people can't kill you as well. There's a couple other Pokemon that works for it, but that's why I have this item. I really think it's insanely broken. If you play League of Legends, you know Stopwatch is insanely broken for this exact reason. This invincibility is just so good. And it allows you to go for insane like combos by yourself too. You can go invincible and wait for your team to catch up to you. So like on speedsters, that's really good, that like to dive in, or just if you get a really good flank in a team fight. X speed, pretty self-explanatory. Again, it's a crutch for a lot of Pokemon to be better. It's like the only item I've run on Blissey for years now. Full heal is a necessity on certain Pokemon just to be able to get your combos off without getting stunned out of them. So that's these 4 items I feel like are very self-explanatory on this list, besides Shedinja doll, but the rest are very self-explanatory. So again, this is a competitive tier list, but I have Potion and X Attack in the next tier, and this is competitive. So even though the tier list is named OP and Solo Queue, because these are some of the best items in Solo Queue in my opinion, they're still like good and competitive. Like you see these running competitive. I like to run Potion a lot actually, especially on Trevenant. So they're still decent and competitive, and they're the next best behind these 4, but they're not that good. And then Met is just like, you might like Asia might run Goal Getter. I really don't see the hype behind it. Slow Smoke you run on like Comfy sometimes, and that's about it. So these are just like meh, like maybe you can use them, they're not that good. And we have Ass, where you should never pick it, that's Fluffy Tail. It just really doesn't do anything. Like if you want to run Fluffy Tail, I recommend running X Attack. It's going to give you way better tempo throughout the game. And yeah, sorry, it just opened Discord there. But yeah, anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I have the full item tier list here. I have the full Pokemon tier list here. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.